What's up, everyone? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and rejoining us is...
Jammin Jon, back from his sabbatical.
Back to get metal as fuck with these two. So yeah, we have an album review for you, of course. We're reviewing the new album from Hideous Divinity, Simulacrum. This came out November 8th on Century Media Records. This is their first one on Century Media Records after leaving Unique Leader. They're from Italy. They've been around since 2007, and they actually feature current and former members of Aborted and Hour of Penance.
Which makes sense, because the record sounds heavily alike.
Very. These guys have
Penance and Aborted.
These guys have always drawn comparisons to Hour of Penance, not just because I believe it's one of the guitarists is actually one of the former members, but very similar in terms of just being brutal, technical death metal, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I'd say brutal tech death.
Yeah. It's more focused on brutal than tech, I think, for the most part, but solid band.
It's got the speed of tech, but it doesn't incorporate too much actual technical playing.
So it opens up with Delusion Centuries, and right away you get the flat-out sound of Hideous Divinity, which is, again, technical, brutal death metal.
Yeah.
And I thought this one was a pretty decent track. It set the pace for the album. It's fucking fast as shit. The drumming is
nuts.
Insane. A frantic pace.
I wish when we had seen him live that the sound man had fucked up.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
As far as the drums were concerned, it was a little rough, because that guy's such a talented musician.
You get a good sense of the production on this, which I think is a little bit slightly grittier, but more of a full sound. I think it's just better produced. I liked their last album. In fact, I would say it was one of my favorites of 2017. But I thought the recording was a little sterile. Like, it was a little too polished. It was great, but I thought it was a little too polished, at least for my liking.
Well, I guess a little too polished as far as brutal death metal is concerned. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a place for a well-polished album, but in brutal death metal, you don't want it to sound that pristine, like robotic.
You want grit.
Yeah, which this record has.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's very straightforward in the sense that it is tons of chugging, tons of blasts, and this one actually has like an interesting break with a spoken word bit towards the end, which I thought was kind of interesting, and it was kind of a theme that went on throughout the album, was experimenting more with dynamics.
Very much so.
In fact, the next track, The Embalmer, which was the lead-off single, and one they put out a very fucking weird video for. I still don't quite... It's uncomfortable to watch. It's like a lot of clay and paint and fake blood and hair, and it just makes me uncomfortable looking at them.
It's weird, yeah.
But this one I thought was an absolute standout on the album. I really loved it. It is very, very well written. It transitions well from the first track. There's a little bit more atmosphere to it, like mixed amongst all the, palm muted chugs and all that you expect from brutal death metal. There's actually some tremolo strumming in there to build atmosphere.
Well, again, you touched on dynamic. I think there's definitely more going on in this album for them than there was in the album prior to it.
Yeah.
The dynamic is a great word, because there's a lot of stuff incorporated in this album that didn't make too long of an appearance, I guess, on the record prior to it.
Yeah.
So,
you had moments.
Yeah.
This was more of a concentrated effort to actually squeeze in more memorable moments per songs, because, that's the problem with brutal death metal and just like high-paced death metal that's all blast beats. You get lost in the blast blender. But if you squeeze in enough really cool dynamic moments, you really remember the songs. And this one I especially liked. I thought this one it was better than the opening track. This should have been the opening track, honestly, because I think it packed more of a punch, and the frontman's vocals on here are fantastic. His range from high screams to low growls and then mid growl, like he has a solid delivery, really quick parts, and then like slow, deliberate, like just low growls. And they're excellent delivery. Absolutely loved it. Now, one of my favorites on here was Anamorphia Auto 3. Now, I have to bring up the fact that I was listening to this on YouTube when I was reviewing it, and a commercial for marinara sauce came up when I clicked on this video. It's like, oh, wow, this is so stereotypically Italian. All right. But
that's fucking funny.
I loved the riff structure on this song. It was excellent. There's some death thrash moments that reminded me a lot of Pestilence, and a giant breakdown that comes in around about 1:45 that just screams like mid-2000s Behemoth.
Yeah.
And this was where another element started coming in too. speaking of Behemoth, there are notes of black metal now. Really wasn't a thing in the previous albums. It was very straightforward, very rigid, but there's certain melodies in here that scream black metal.
I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again as far as metal is concerned. Releasing an album in this day and age, you gotta really bring something to the fucking table to stand out. And for a lot of bands, even such as this one, it seems to be a commonplace thing now to try and venture out a little bit outside of the box for your band to make your album stand out.
Yeah.
Hence the reason, there's touches of black metal in here now. It's
like a lot of moments on here, and there's even some surprises towards the end that lean toward the black metal side. But again, I like the fact that they approach this with different styles in mind to incorporate in there. And honestly, I feel like this album's a lot looser. Like, it feels it flows more evenly than, say, their previous albums, which, again, kind of sound rigid and a little bit stiff, but they're still really well executed. They're all about precision.
Right. I mean, again, that goes back to dynamic again, when you touch on how a song flows, and normally for a lot of bands, it's just a straightforward blast with not much going on as far as anything to separate it from the rest. But they really, they did a good job. I'm really impressed with the song.
So I really liked how the song closed too, because it kind of had this long fade out of this cool, just epic, chuggy moment, much like For Whom the Bell Tolls. And I just thought that was a really cool standout thing. It didn't just abruptly end or have some weird sample at the end. It was really cool.
So, one for me would be the Deaden Room. Super, super fast.
I love the isolated bass in the beginning.
Yeah, and that too. Well, in that too, when we talked about the grittiness of the mix, they're allowing, though, more so on this album to let the individual instruments shine a little more. Nothing sounds really overly buried.
Yeah, I mean, there's clear separation, but when they all come together, it's a very full sound.
I just like the Deaden Room because it was fast as fuck, but it had these really neat breakdowns throughout.
I know they came in around 2 minutes and 40 seconds. That was the big breakdown that just instantly caught me. It kind of reminded me of the breakdown they had on Passages, which is, if you've never jammed Hideous Divinity, jam that song. Action, the next track, was one I really got into. This one, actually, I really like the vocal interplay. And this is just one vocalist, but he is going highs, lows, and mids all throughout the song, and it kind of reminded me of the same vocal dynamic you get with a band like Misery Index, where you get those distinct moments.
Yep.
And there's some really cool melodies throughout this, too. Like, this song definitely brought in some very interesting melodies that really remind me of like a band like Insomnium in terms of how they like to layer their sound, except these guys don't have a keyboard, so it's just a lot of cool guitar melodies that are interplayed, and I really just enjoy that. Again, this shows musical growth over time, which is something I always look for in releases. Seed of Future Horror, another one that I thought was really good. This one had a very Nile-like opening, especially with that fucking wild drum fill. Yeah. Instantly screamed George Calais. And this one's just carried by a really cool triplet chug, and it has a nice little, tremolo melody over it. Yep. Again, like kind of this cool layered effect that I thought was excellent on here.
This band loves to do cool, triplet chugs, and they do them so fast too.
And I like the fact that it wasn't just the straightforward
it wasn't a straightforward blast.
They brought in
a little bit more syncopated.
Yeah, and there was also a thrashier blast section again that showed a little bit like that death thrash style, which I like too. Really cool. I really dug this track again. Now, one I have to bring up just because it kind of stuck out, and it could have been great, but it kind of lost me, was the last track that they wrote, because there are two covers on here. Implementi Exito. I think that's how you say it.
I think it's it. If it's not, we're sorry.
Now, this one starts off very doomy and atmospheric, almost like post-metal. Kind of reminded me of Neurosis for a minute. And at no point did I think anything on this album was going to remind me of Neurosis. But it kind of goes more like a sludgy death doom, almost like Morbid Angel.
Yeah, yep. It's definitely the slowest song on the album.
But then the mid part just shifts in their usual fare, and I thought it was still good, but it kind of tries to bookend that moment, but it's a very short song. It kind of just fades out on that opening part, which was decidedly different than I think anything on this album. And I just feel like they left something on the table there. Like, this should have been a longer track. They should have built on this slower stuff a little bit and sort of slowly worked into the more fast stuff. I know, I feel like they were really onto something. I really enjoyed it, but again, they just left something on the table there, and I feel like there was a really cool idea there that just didn't come fully into fruition. I'd like to hear them try this more in the future because I think they executed it very well. It's just a sample size.
Maybe it'll be something like when some bands play live, they add that extra little kick that wasn't on the album.
That'd be kind of cool.
Like when we saw Revocation recently, when they played the Starlit Darkness, that riff that was on the end went forever.
So, there are 2 covers at the end, and I was kind of surprised by
I was too, dude. I didn't know what to expect.
So the first cover was of Machine Head's Blood of the Zodiac. That was the last track on The More Things Change.
Yep.
And I know this song very well. I love The More Things Change. I think that's one of Machine Head's best albums. And it starts off as a very faithful cover. Except for, the vocals are decidedly different because they're death metal vocals. And there's periodic blasts. And then slowly but surely this song starts morphing into more their stuff.
I think it deviated a lot from the original. Like, towards the back half of this cover, I was like, what the fuck am I listening to?
But it still had that same signature riff. And that
I
was
mean,
the
you could still definitely tell if you've heard this song from Machine Head 1,000 times like I have, you still know it's Machine Head. But, like, there were times during this cover where I was like, but they had a couple cool incorporations of like a little bit of. There was a blast at one part.
Oh yeah,
there was like this cool like double kick thing during the breakdown of the song. So
yeah, I mean I liked it just because it was a combination of a faithful cover, which a lot of people do. They want to pay homage to their heroes.
Right.
But it was also one where they really took their own spin on it. It was kind of a combination of those two, and I really liked it. I thought they did an excellent job. Now, the second cover I thought was even more interesting. They covered Mayhem's Cursed in Eternity off of De Mysterious, because if you're going to cover a Mayhem song, chances are it's going to be off that album. Right. This one is a full minute shorter than the original, but I thought they did a solid job. Of course, they stayed very much in the death metal spectrum, but of course all those blackened elements really came out, and I thought the vocalist, he's not Attila. Attila is kind of his own thing, but he did a pretty serviceable job kind of imitating some of the howls and crazy stuff that Attila does. And all in all, it was a really solid cover. And this one I think was maybe a little bit more faithful, but they still had their own spin, mostly in the fact they included a lot more chuggy parts instead of just the straightforward tremolo.
Again, man, if you're a band and wants to cover a song, I mean, I've covered songs with my band and has our own take on it as well. I think that's what you're supposed to do when you pay homage. Be as true as you can, but also put your flavor on it because you didn't write the fucker.
I thought they did a great job, though. I really love these 2 covers just because they were well done, and again, they put their stamp on it, but you 100% knew the source material, and they clearly loved these fans.
Really shocked by the Machine Head.
So overall, I'm going to give this album 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think I've seen some serious growth in the band, and I'm curious what the future holds for them, because there were enough changes on this from their previous album to where I think they're going to be a little bit more adventurous in the future in terms of their songwriting. Like I said, that last track that I brought up that wasn't a cover, I want to hear a little bit more of that. If they do that again as a big closer, make it giant and epic. But I thought the album was paced really well, produced really well, and it's metal as fuck. Yep. So, I dug it.
I'm also going to give it 4 stars. Almost to touch on a lot of what Nick said, this band has most certainly grown from their last album, and they're experimenting. I like it. I love it when bands, when they put out a new record, you can tell they've been paying attention and thinking a lot, maybe even drawing in inspiration from bands that they've toured with. Like, you just hear a whole lot more going on in this album than the last one. And don't get me wrong, I loved the last fucking record.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
But this new one was a good, I don't want to say change of pace, because it wasn't a change of pace, but again, the overall dynamics of this record, and the fact that it wasn't just like a straightforward blast, but it definitely had an incorporation of some groove in this band, which I thought they needed a little more of even in the last record. I liked the production of this album because of that grit factor.
So, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do shit like this all the time. Catch you guys later.